Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I want to talk about orange dive watches. So I have been considering getting another dive watch, and I like the idea of orange on dive watches. I know that it could be because they're easier to read. It could be from my days at Syracuse. It could just be that I like orange. It's sort of irrelevant, I suppose, in terms of the reason why. Regardless, there are a lot of options that have been made and are still made in the realm of dive watches that are orange. So I've come up with 4 in my research that I wanted to highlight here, but I'm also interested in ideas on other watches that I'm obviously overlooking. Now, that being said, I had to set some ground rules in my own searching, so I had 3 of them. First is it needed to be a real dive watch, and by real dive watch, I decided to define that by a mandate of at least 200 meters of water resistance, so anything lower got thrown out. Second, it needed to be in production, and I define that as being able to find it on the manufacturer's website. And I note that because I have seen, when I was doing my research, a number of recommendations for Seikos and Orients, and I couldn't find any orange dive watches from Seiko or Orient currently made. Now, they might be readily available on the used market, I'm not sure, but it didn't meet the parameter, so I had to dismiss those because I just couldn't find any. Likewise, there are some other really popular ones I saw come up that just aren't made at this present time, so they were also removed from consideration. And third was to define what do I mean by orange. And I'm relatively flexible on that. The way I said it is either the dial needed to be predominantly orange and or the bezel insert needed to be predominantly orange. But the whole thing didn't need to be orange. The whole dial, the dial doesn't even need to be orange necessarily, as long as if one were to see it, they go, oh, wow, that's a lot of orange. So it's sort of the threshold. Anyway, so the first of the 4 watches that I identified in my research is actually the one that doesn't have a lot of orange on the dial, and that is Omega's Planet Ocean 600M Co-Axial Master Chronometer 43.5 millimeter. So that's in the Seamaster line. And specification-wise, of the 4 watches, this one is far and away the most robust that I have in this video. So we are talking 600 meters of water resistance, as the name would suggest. It's COSCAN Meta certified. It's, as the name would also indicate, it's a 43.5 millimeter diameter watch, and that's the largest. I'm actually going to go through these in diameter order from big to small. So it's the largest one that of the 4 that I've got for you today. It's got a lot of magnetic resistance, over 15,000 Gauss, and it's an automatic watch. It's using their coaxial escapement. So it's, I believe, a 3.5 hertz movement is how that, in terms of what it beats at. Otherwise, pretty much what we'd expect, screw down crown, unidirectional rotating bezel. This one does have a transparent case back. It's the only one of the 4 that does have such a case back, so you can look at the coaxial movement should you desire. And so again, the positives are this one is a serious dive watch. It's got a helium escape valve at the 10 o'clock position. As you can see from the image, it's the bezel insert that's orange and loomed. The dial itself does have orange markings at the 12, 6, and 9 positions on those indices, along with the tip of the second hand is also orange, I believe. So positives are very robust, very serious dive watch. Negatives are it's listed on Omega's website at $6,500, so it's extremely expensive. And at that price point, there are a lot of other watches that I am more interested in, so this wouldn't be one for me, at least not at a new in-box price, but it's a pretty interesting watch, and I thought it deserved to be on the list. Second watch is DOXA. DOXA is, I believe, the watchmaker that first came up with an orange dial for a dive watch. I believe they were the very first to do it after doing testing and determining that orange was the easiest color to see in the darkness under the water. So regardless of the history of it, I thought a DOXA deserved to be on the list. So I have their Sub 200, which I believe was unveiled in 2019. This is a 3-hand dive watch. It does have a date window in the 3 o'clock position, much like the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean we just looked at. As the Sub 200 name would suggest, this one does only go to 200 meters of water resistance. And it is a 42 millimeter diameter watch. Now, according to DOXA's website, this uses a Swiss mechanical movement that beats at 4 hertz, but it doesn't say the name of the movement. 38-hour power reserve, though, tells me that it's probably an ETA 2824 or the Sellita counterpart. It's 14 millimeters thick, screw-down crown, as you would expect for a dive watch. We already mentioned the water resistance, and it is a stainless steel watch. Now, price-wise on the bracelet, this is $990 US, so a much more affordable watch than the Planet Ocean is. I've read that it is extremely well loomed as a functional dive watch. So positives are iconic orange dive watch, reasonable price point. You're still getting a Swiss automatic movement if that's something you're interested in. We do have a uni-rotating bezel, as you would expect. This is just the timing bezel. I'll touch on that later because there's another watch that's going to be a little more complicated that I want to cover. But in terms of negatives, I don't know. The main one that I've seen some people mention in forum discussions, because DOXA has come up, and I think it's this model, but I'm not I'd have to go back and check. I'm not positive, but I've heard complaints or read complaints that DOXA dive watch is being top heavy, and I don't know what that means actually. I don't know. Like, for example, I'm wearing a dive watch right now. On a NATO strap, this watch is very heavy compared to the strap. Is that what top heavy means? Is that compared to the bracelet or compared to the strap? Because you can get this off of a steel bracelet. You can get it in other fashions. Is it just really heavy? Does top heavy mean that there's more weight towards the 12 o'clock position versus, is it unbalanced? Does it mean that there's more weight towards the bezel versus the base, the case back? I found it an odd statement, but I also didn't spend very much time, apparently, looking into exactly what they meant by it, and I didn't feel like asking. So anyway, I'm not sure, but I'd be interested. If anyone has experience with the DOXA 200 sub, I'd love to hear some comments below about what your thoughts are of it. So let's move to watch number 3, which also is a 42 millimeter diameter watch, and is also 14 millimeters in thickness, so very comparable watch. This next one is the Rotary Super 7 Scuba Gents watch. As I noted, we've got the same case diameter and case thickness as the DOXA 200 that we just talked about. We've got another orange dial in play. You can see from the images where the indices and hands look quite a bit different than the DOXA's does, but it is well loomed. We've got what I think of dive watch wise, bezel looks more traditional to me in terms of we've got the pearl at the 12 o'clock position for it's just a timing bezel. Main difference on this, there are a few. First is this rotary watch is actually rated to 300 meters of water resistance rather than 200, so it is more robust than the DOXA we just covered. Another big difference on this watch is the movement. I didn't actually see the movement listed on Rotary's website, so I looked it up through another website and saw that it's using the Miyota caliber 8205. Now, the Miyota 8205 is a 3 hertz movement, not a 4 hertz movement, or 3.5 hertz movement in the case of the Omega. It also has a 42-hour runtime, so it's a little bit more robust than the ETA Sellita 4 hertz in terms of power reserve by about 4 hours. Also, this watch is quite a bit less than even the DOXA we just looked at, in that it is $600 on their website. So, the positives are this is, on paper, specification-wise, this is a very robust watch. It's basically fitting many of the dimensions of the DOXA, but it's coming in at hundreds of dollars less. I don't know what the accuracy difference would be between the Miyota movement and the ETA or Sellita that the DOXA is using. On paper, the Miyota movement has got a pretty broad range, a very inaccurate broad range of like minus 20 seconds per day to plus 40 seconds per day. I have no idea if Rotary goes to the effort of trying to regulate that movement more. At $600, my guess is no, they probably do not. But likewise, I don't know the quality or the grade of the Swiss movement in the DOXA, so I don't know if that's actually going to be any more accurate or not either. So price point wise, that makes this one extremely attractive. Obviously, a 3 hertz movement, you're going to have less smooth sweep on the seconds hand than you would get with either the Omega or the DOXA. But again, if you're just after an orange dive watch, this, I mean, overall, I really like the aesthetic to this one. I think it looks pretty good. So that's definitely one I would consider. And then finally, the last one I have is from a company I have no familiarity with called Zeno-Watch Basel. And they have a watch called the Navy Diver Retro. Now, this watch is only 40 millimeters in diameter. It, like the Rotary, has 300 meters of water resistance. And you'll notice in the image, the bezel has numbers in the inner ring and then there are numbers in the outer ring. And that's the difference I wanted to point out. So this watch is got a no decompression markings on it. So by that I mean the inner ring is where the timing is, and the outer ring in this case is the depth. So it's a pretty interesting idea in that the way it works is if you look kind of at the 10 o'clock position on the image I have up on the screen, you'll see the outer ring has a 20 and the inner ring has a 50. So the idea is once you set your pips, which are at the 12 o'clock currently, you move those to where the minute hand is. And then the inner and outer rings are moving it's unidirectional bezel again. And when you rotate that, you're going to have those both moved in the same position. So you're able to glance and look and say, oh, okay, if you know you're going on a 20-meter dive, you would have 50 minutes from where you've set the watch. So you know that you could stay down there 50 minutes without having to decompress on the way up. So that's the idea behind it. The thing that's interesting about this is I don't know exactly why or how. I think this watch came out in 2017 from what I'm able to see. I don't know how Zeno-Watch Basel gets to do the bezel. My understanding is that no decompression dive bezel is patented by DOXA. Now, we didn't see it on the Sub 200. The Sub 200 had our standard diving timing bezel alone, just the one outer ring in the bezel insert. But if you go to their website, you can look at the DOXA Sub 300 and you will see that bezel. You'll see this same style of diving bezel. And it was known on their 250, which from their website, I'm guessing DOXA isn't currently making their 250 model. But anyway, it's something they've done before for quite a while. Now, Zeno-Watch Basel says that this is something from the 70s. Maybe they had the rights from DOXA to use it. Maybe there's some minor difference from the patent that lets them get away with doing this. But otherwise, it looks a lot like what we'll generously call an homage watch in a lot of ways. I mean, they're copying from DOXA in more than just this. I'd say, though, overall, I mean, now price-wise, I should go ahead and note this is listed as $907 US on their website. So it's interesting. You're coming in at around the price of the DOXA Sub 200. It is like $90 cheaper. You do have more depth. According to Zeno-Watch Basel, this watch does use the ETA 2824, so Swiss movement. Date is in a different position. All these other watches we have looked at have had the date in the 3 o'clock position, with the Rotary actually having a day in addition to the date, as you probably noticed in the images. And I'm not too interested ultimately in dates on dive watches, but apparently all the ones I grabbed that were orange have them. This one's got it in the 430 position, which I actually like that position, but a lot of people don't. They do prefer having dates in the 6 or the 3, so it's something to note. Not a huge fan of the hand design on this watch personally, but again, it's sort of a minor issue. So I throw it out there though because it was smaller and got you some things at a like better depth rating at a price point that was competitive with the DOXA. Another major difference on this one versus all the other ones is the crystal. All the other watches I've shown had sapphire crystals. This one has an acrylic, so it's a plastic crystal. So for me, I would rule this watch out immediately because while there's a good visual style you get with an acrylic crystal, just in my day-to-day, I'm going to scratch it. I can probably get away with mineral glass. I have one watch with mineral glass, and I haven't scratched it up. But everything else I have is sapphire. And at the $900 price point, quite honestly, I expect it. So that would rule this one out for me just because it's plastic, and I don't want to have to keep polishing the thing. But Anyway, it might be worthwhile to those of you who are really wanting that 70s aesthetic and need that plastic crystal to get that effect. But anyway, so those are 4 orange dive watches that I've found. Do any of you have any experience with any of these 4 models? If so, I'd love to read about them in the comments. Also, I'll be looking at any suggestions on other orange dive watches, be they orange bezels or orange dials, that are worth consideration. I just like to explore them. I think it's an interesting idea. I haven't decided I'm going to pull the trigger on anything yet or not, but I figured, hey, I do these videos, so why not find out what you all think? Other than that, thanks for watching the video. If you want to be notified, you can always click the subscribe button, and otherwise, I'll talk to you all next time. Take care.